to explore the boundless realms of technology. With our distinguished guests and insightful sessions ahead, we are poised for an enriching journey into the forefront of innovation. Our discussions will cover pivotal themes like Web3, artificial intelligence, and governance challenges, shedding light on the dynamic landscape of technology and its implications for the future. Firstly, a heartfelt welcome to Mr. Tobias Boy, founder of Blockchain Founders Fund. We are honored by your presence and eagerly anticipate your enlightening session on emerging markets of blockchain. I also extend a warm welcome to Dr. Akhil Damodaran, the Dean of the BBA and MBA programs at our university, and the founder and CEO of Elteridium. Dr. Damodaran's insights promise to enrich our discussions today. As we delve into the sessions, I kindly request all attendees to keep themselves on mute for a seamless experience. Feel free to utilize the chat box for questions or insights, which we'll address at the end. Once again, a heartfelt welcome to all, and let's embark on this transformative journey together. Thank you.
So, Tobias,
Amazing.
first of all, thank you so much for coming. And I think it's
Pleasure.
over to you. So, students, before I give it to him, just one point. It's one of the rare occasions that you have somebody like Tobias here. I mean, he's a founder of Blockchain Founders Fund and somebody who really look at the Web3 emerging ecosystem from the macro level. And Tobias, to be very frank, we have different students from different cities who have been sitting here. So I mean, just to have some of the cameras open, that's why we just to show that how much curious they are. So over to you, Tobias. It's your playground, and I would say that please enrich the students with your words. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible and I hope you guys can hear me. It's first of all a pleasure to
Perfectly.
meet. Okay, awesome. It's first of all a pleasure to meet and see. I can see it on the screen. There's a lot of students here, so it's awesome to be here. I spoke at a lot of universities, and I'm always excited to speak to students in India. I think it's an awesome country. I've been there many times in my life. I also have a team in India which is doing an amazing job in helping me source and evaluating deals. And I'm probably going to heading back to India throughout the next couple of months as well. And I'm currently calling out of Bangkok in Thailand. I'm typically based in Singapore. That's also where our fund is based in. So yeah, thank you so much for listening, dialing in, spending a couple of minutes and maybe an hour or something with me. And of course, I want to keep this a rather interactive session. So if you have any questions, pretty sure there's a Q&A session at the end. So drop it in the chat. We will address all of them, and I'll try my best to give you a good answer to them. I want to first use a couple of minutes to kind of introduce myself to you guys, giving you a bit of understanding what we're doing, what Blockchain Founders Fund is, and then I do have a hopefully an interesting quick presentation prepared for you guys. I use a lot of examples, so it's not too technical or not too theoretical. So you also get a bit of an idea of like what we do on a day-to-day basis. So, I'm Tobias. You can call me Toby, short. You can also, reach out to me on any of my socials. I know that a couple of the students have already done this. So forgive me, I'm sometimes a bit slow in responding. There's a lot of people reaching out, but I'll definitely get back to you and, answer any questions you have or help with anything I can. So I'm originally from Germany, from close to Munich. It's a small town, 5,000 people, nothing crazy, pretty boring. But yeah, I've been living in Asia now for the past 8 years. I spend a lot of time across the US, the UAE, China, India, Singapore, Japan. So I lived in a lot of different places and did a lot of different jobs. And it's kind of like my first message. My CV is not the most chronological, right? I didn't do like 10 VC internships and didn't do 10 investment banking internships. I did a bit of everything. And I think it's just important for me to really figure out what I wanted to do. And I think I would never been in this position if I wouldn't have, tried as much as possible, right? So really open every door you can, try to like get new experiences. Even if you have to go sometimes through a bit of a tough time, it's definitely worth it. It also shapes you as a person. And I feel like especially since we are in the venture capital industry, which means like we invest in startups, and we have invested in over 180 companies so far. So it's a big portfolio we have. you work with a lot of different characters, you work with a lot of different people who have, crazy ideas sometimes a little too crazy. But that's exactly what we're here for. We are able to, and want to take a bet and risk on someone who wants to challenge something. And I feel like the whole Web3 and blockchain space is anyway something which is quite new and upcoming. And I'm pretty sure you guys have seen some of the news. Not everything is positive, right? There's a lot of challenges, failures, scams happening on a day-to-day basis. So it's quite difficult to navigate this whole industry. But Blockchain Founders Fund effectively was established in 2017 when, crypto was, or Web3 was a wild west, literally. Right? Everything was happening. You could make a lot of money, you could lose a lot of money overnight. Not many use cases were established. It was a very different industry it is today. But we always understood the value of blockchain, in terms of concealing something, right? Tracking something, putting something basically engraved in something, which has use cases in a lot of different industries. And of course, in the beginning, the use cases were yet to be figured out. But I think at least today we are in a stage where a lot of great businesses are being formed, and even founders who have done great in traditional tech are now understanding the value proposition of technology in itself. So Blockchain Founders Fund, we are now a $300 million fund. So we have raised money from China, no, sorry, not China, actually, India, the US, Singapore, Hong Kong. And we work together with a lot of different banks, telco companies, crypto companies, of course, as well, like the likes of Ripple and many others, Polygon, if you're familiar, a great project out of India. And we now invest in very early stage companies, right? So when you're basically just getting off the grid, you start understanding what your entrepreneurial journey will be. Then we are here to give you capital, but not just capital. We also run on the side what we call, are you guys familiar with the concept of an accelerator? Basically, you take a company and you help them from 0 to 1 with resources and manpower and so on and so forth. Because a lot of things the startup needs at first is obviously not only money, right? They need a lot of different things in order to scale up. So we built what we call the portfolio management team. It's called the venture team. And they really help the founders to get off the grid, and connect them with lawyers, other investors, partners, potential clients, help them with go-to-market strategies, with media, with, of course, marketing as well, to really give them a kickstart. And we invest between $200,000 is our smallest investment and $5 million our biggest investment. Like I said in the very beginning, we've done over 180 investments now, a lot of follow-on investments into companies. We also invested in 10 other venture capital funds, more for strategic deal flow purposes. And yeah, it was a tough journey. Especially we were raising our last fund when FTX collapsed. You might be familiar, it's a large exchange. UST was a stable coin which collapsed. And many other players like Celsius and so on and so forth had challenges, and a lot of people were moving away from the Web3 industry. But we still had to invest money. We still had to work with founders. We still had to raise our own capital. So you can imagine it wasn't the easiest journey. But yeah, that's basically what's, where you have to have grit, where you have to be convinced in something. And even though a lot of people tell you it's not a smart idea, you have to push through, right? And like, I think eventually you're going to reward you. And that's also, I think, some sort of takeaway you can have. Whatever you want to do, if it's crypto, Web3, venture capital, I don't know what your career aspirations are, but sometimes it's not always very obvious to a lot of people what you're doing, and it might take some time to mature, but you just have to be convinced that what you're doing is the right thing, and then you have to push through. And eventually you're going to get rewarded. And the team is now about 14 people strong. We're also hiring another person in the investment team. So if any of you guys is interested, I'm more than happy to have a conversation. And yeah, they're based between the US, India, and Singapore for the most part, because we want to cover like the majority of the world in terms of time zones. We invest all around the world. And I personally am a big fan of DeFi, meaning decentralized finance, payments, as well as infrastructure related deals, as my background is predominantly investment banking, private equity, startup stuff. So like I've always been more on that kind of side, which is a personal interest. But then at the same time, we have people on the fund who look at blockchain gaming. You might be familiar with. They look at metaverse related investments. They look at more application layer investments. There's a lot of stuff happening in Web3 now across media entertainment. we just invested, for example, in a really interesting company called Kino. They're helping movie studios in order to reach their fans more effective. So like you already can see that it's not just like your crypto exchange and your crypto wallet, which are now being more relevant. It's a lot of different application layers across almost every aspect of life, right? Being payment, being music, being film, being social media. If you have a bit of time on the weekend, download the app Farcaster. We're not invested. This is not, I'm just not telling you this because I have a benefit out of it, but it's like the first social media platform which actually has user, which is completely on chain. So like, you have to download your seed phrase and you basically create a wallet by entering and you can communicate with people. And it's just a new experience of interacting with people, right? Despite being, of course, on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or any other of these platforms. That is a very interesting way of understanding, okay, how is blockchain going to change, for example, your everyday social media interaction? So that's, I think, what's exciting. And especially in this market, we are entering what we call a more bullish market, right? I mean, people are more excited about Web3 again, more investments is funneled into Web3, and a lot of startups are able to raise significant amount of capital to solve their problems. And that's where we come into play. We give them capital and support, as I mentioned, and we help them scale. And yeah, I'm going to anticipate to do another like 50 to 60 investments this year. So we're very active. You can probably see I spent yesterday until 4 o'clock in the morning to finish up some of the last investments we wanted to do before we go into our, NAV reporting, basically when we report our assets, our new investments to our investors. So a lot of stuff has been done, but nevertheless, I'm very happy to be here. And please write and put your questions into the chat. I'm very excited to have a bit more of a conversation at the end of the day. I'm going to use that time now quickly to pull up a couple of slides because I think it's kind of interesting to see where blockchain has its applications. So if you guys allow me to share my screen, that would be awesome. I hope you guys can see.
Yeah, we can see. We can see.
Is it visible?
Yeah, it's perfectly visible about this.
Okay, awesome.
It's okay.
Cool. So this is actually a slide I had presented a couple of times at big investment conferences as well. So this is really like first-hand information. It's a bit of a journey in this slide, right? It starts very early of how blockchain also has evolved and how blockchain is driving return on investment in different industries. And I think it's a very interesting topic to give you a bit of a outside insight into the industry. And my main goal of the session today is basically two things. Is first of all, taking a little bit away this obscurity of the industry, because a lot of people are still not fully certain, is this a scam? Is this here to stay? Is this weird? But also showing you a little bit more, where's the application of this technology, right? It's really almost in every single part of our lives already, at least blockchain, and then Web3, of course, is a slightly different component. But you will see that. And of course, I also want to inspire you to, maybe even do an internship, pursue a career in this industry, just check it out firsthand and see there's a lot of cool people in the space. It's a very interesting community. And it's also a lot of fun to work with founders. So industries and applications, right? I mean, I mentioned a couple of here, which are probably the most predominant ones. I'm going to start with blockchain gaming because it was a big hype in 2020, 2021. And I'm pretty sure some of you have heard of a game called Axie Infinity. There's also a new game being released called Sharpnel. And I mean, at least I liked to play video games when I was younger and had more time. So I think blockchain gaming is a really interesting use case because here you can now own your assets. You can facilitate anything on chain. So basically means everything is tracked, right? If you play, I don't know if there's Fortnite players or Minecraft players or all these things. If you buy skins in those games, you don't necessarily own them. You cannot take them into different games. You cannot monetize them. You cannot rent them to anyone if you're away. For example, if you go on holiday and someone wants to play your character, you're not getting monetized of it. You cannot even do that really. Blockchain games are able to facilitate that. So it is a very interesting area. AI in gaming is a big part also right now. And also AI is very intertwined with Web3, right? Because AI models using blockchain-related data, using data in certain applications like gaming, having an RPG game, for example, a role play game where the characters run on AI and basically are not your dumb characters run against the wall, but they actually interact with you. They actually make this whole experience a lot more lively. The creator economy, I'm not sure if any one of you guys are, sort of very active on socials or even like trying to be, pursuing an influencer career, want to go into Bollywood, like all these different things where like you actually need community in order to make that work. But the problem is a lot of creators, unless you're big, you're not really getting monetized for any of the content you put out. And it's very a black and white game. Am I getting monetized? Is it going to be visible for the people? Can they interact? Can I maybe even like share, rent, sell my comment? Just to give you an idea, what's happening in the real world is that like big creators, they're selling their IP rights on certain videos to, let's say, ad agencies or movie companies or just generally to art collectors. And friends of mine that sold videos, one Instagram video for $50,000, right? But like the problem is they're only making this money one time and they cannot distribute it accrue their fans. So like the creator economy is very big. That's why like apps like Farcaster and many others are basically like a really interesting push in this direction of how to democratize that, right? Because at the end of the day, if you play Facebook or if you use Facebook, if you use Instagram, we always have that saying in VC, which is basically if you are not paying for something, you are the product, right? What that means is since Instagram, Facebook, all these platforms are for free, the way these platforms make money is by selling your data. So you're at the end of the day the product. They're just using a framework to capture your attention, to capture your interest, to capture your information, and then monetizing off it by selling it to ad companies and so on and so forth. But the creative economy can turn it around because you can own your data and you can monetize off the data as you want and as you wish. I think that's a really interesting game also considering the narrative of privacy. If you look at the European Union with their framework GDPR, there's a lot of push against that. Supply chain, if you, for example, if you go in a supermarket, you don't know where your product is coming from, right? You simply, they can say it's from South America, that's from Singapore, it's from Malaysia, from India, but you don't necessarily know, and it's very difficult to track. And I have an example later of Walmart when they introduced blockchain, what it did for their business. Pets in ownership. So we invested in a company, and trust me, getting this investment across our investment committee was a very difficult one. So it's called Petastic. What they're trying to do is they build a digital passport for pets, and that's an NFT. So when you, for example, I don't know if anyone ever tried that, but if you have a dog or cat or any pet basically, and you want to move countries, or if you go to a different doctor, or if you get a vaccine for that animal, it's sometimes quite difficult to do that because there's no unified record of your pets globally. In the US, China, I think even India, one of the biggest pet markets in the world, that's a massive industry. And Petastic originally started trying to put that all on chain to give, basically a digital ID is when you put your passport, but have that for your dog, everything is recorded. And once you have enough user, you can upsell them on cat food, dog insurance, grooms, anything related to pets, basically. But it's very difficult, the narrative to believe about a year and a half ago when we invested. But I really understand. I had a cat, I had many pets in the past, and I always know that it's an issue. And I really wanted to find a product which is solving that. And now they've onboarded over 1 million pets already on their app. They're profitable business. They're raising capital. So it is working. It's just sometimes you have to be, humble enough to understand that, what does that do for the future? So like having a bit of a future look and like, even if a lot of people don't think that's the right way, it's very important for this industry. Remittance, yeah, if you send money from Dubai to the Philippines, from Singapore to India, whatever, it's very expensive. It takes a lot of time on blockchain. It's instant. It doesn't cost you as much. So there's a lot of, value in cross-border transactions, education as well. How can you make that more streamlined? A lot of degrees are issued. So for example, I graduated from National University of Singapore and my degree is on a blockchain. So it's tamper-proof. It's very easy for me to prove that I actually graduated from NUS and I didn't fake the degree. There's a lot of interesting angles in that. Social impact, charity. Charity is a big problem. If you want to donate money to your country, how do you know it actually reaches where it should go? Maybe someone is taking it on the way. You don't know. Being on a blockchain is still hard because, you have to have always that input problem. If someone doesn't put the right information on a blockchain, it's not going to be right just because it's on a blockchain. So there's still some challenges, but technically, if you could implement it, it would have a very big impact to charity and just social welfare. Blockchain gaming, let's start with that because I'm pretty sure some of you guys are probably interested. We invested in this company, Splinterlands. I don't know if any of you have ever seen or played this. It's a card game. It started in 2018 before this blockchain hype basically came about. But they have about 50,000 users now. They became, a unicorn at some point in time. It also obviously changed because the narrative changed. Then Axie Infinity came along, and many other blockchain games are being built and also receive funding for that. And a lot of people are very excited about this space, about this narrative. And I do think it is very exciting, but I think there's a bunch of problems still, right? Because the whole idea about blockchain gaming was that play to earn mechanism, right? So you play a game and you earn at the same time. What this has created is that the whole narrative of a game was basically destroyed for a second, right? Because people didn't play the game because it was an amazing game. They did it almost as a job because they could monetize from it. And the Philippines, for example, became a massive hub where literally people played this game 15, 16 hours a day across massive organizations where they just hired people playing games and they take a cut of what they're making, and that's still enough to run a business. But of course, that only works if the game economy works, if the token does well, and many other things, but it clearly wasn't sustainable. So now what we are seeing now is that a lot of these companies are moving away from the pure play and earn mechanism, but actually understanding how can I build a great game first and then figure out ways of either monetizing it or enabling these features blockchain does to a game, what I just mentioned in the beginning. You can see here, it was a big gaming market, and it's expected to grow to about 65 billion, which is a massive growth rate. I know I've listed some of the main sort of big brand names here over the last years. And also the fact that a lot of gamers are more likely to buy cryptocurrency than non-gamers because they either use Discord, they're in a different world, they maybe have even used Bitcoin before or other cryptocurrencies. So it is a very interesting target group for our industry. AI gaming, here you can see the same thing. It's like basically if you use the same concept as we just talked about, but you add an AI layer to it, which is mostly done to either build the word, the surrounding you have, or to give characters a brain. We, for example, invested in a company which is now a unicorn, meaning that they have achieved over $1 billion valuation. And their idea was, how can we power game characters with AI, right? And they are now working with a lot of game studios and even got acquired recently by a company called Futureverse, because now you have smart game experience, right? Your characters move with you, your characters are walking with you, your characters can do things because they're driven by a large database, which is consistently being fueled by your actions in the game. So the way you behave, the way you play the game is funneled back into the other characters, which are not playable. And then that makes the whole game experience more interesting. Future of gaming, we have enhanced music, object as we just talked about. There's also a big push into virtual reality, right? Metaverse, all these different things. You probably have seen Apple released glasses recently. A lot of people on TikTok and Twitter and stuff like this are making videos where they, jump around like this. It's opening a whole different dimension, right? It's not yet mainstream because the devices are too expensive, but that is definitely what's going to happen. And there's a lot of innovation being funneled into entertainment because as people spend more and more time on their smartphone and people have smartphones, we see a big market here evolving. The only problem is, though, that not in every country the internet is as good and cheap as in India. If you even compare it to Germany, I pay so much money for data that a lot of people are not able to engage in that way, right? Even in certain parts of Africa, you don't have necessarily 5 or 4G. So a lot of people aren't able to even download the games in the first place. That's why a lot of cloud computing service coming out where they are able to, help you play a game without having necessarily that strongest internet connections. So it's gonna get more accessible throughout the world. Even no code. Like we saw, for example, we invest in this company Grid, which is I think quite interesting. It enables you to build your own video game in less than 5 minutes. Of course, it's not like your AAA game like Call of Duty or GTA, but at the end of the day, you can build your own game in 5 minutes and you can monetize it. And so far, they have built over 500,000 games, and they work now with large telco companies to funnel their app to provide gamification services for larger businesses. I'm pretty sure if you log into your telco or like into your electricity account on your app, you probably see games because people try very consistently to get your attention in every sort of direction. And that's going to just continue growing with, things like these gamifications, virtual reality, and many other of these buzzwords where people are just trying to capture your valuable attention, which is already scattered across many platforms, ads, and so on and so forth. So just be ready for seeing more and more of these things happening in your daily life without even realizing that this might be on a blockchain. Yeah, games can be monetized, of course. I don't need to go in too much details, but the biggest market is hyper casual games. It's a total of 50% downloads. So if you think about gaming, it's actually not your AAA game, like your fancy game. It's actually like, if you ever played like Flappy Bird or Super Mario, like all these like easy games you can play on a bus, anywhere you are, and a little break. That's the biggest game market in the world. And that's what a lot of people are focusing on. Supply chain, big piece since basically 2016, 2017. A lot of companies run their whole supply chain on a blockchain. They use NFTs for authentications. Even like luxury businesses have tapped into that market to prove that this bag is legit, that this is not a fake one. And even in Africa, you have things like counterfeit food, medicine. You probably have seen that there was a big issue of baby powder in China a couple of years ago. So that should ideally not happen, because that clearly shows that some of the larger organizations are not able to track where their product is exactly coming from, because otherwise you wouldn't have that issue. In Germany, we had a horse meat scandal at some point in time that people ate horse meat instead of beef. Like, these are all things that we definitely should avoid, because it's not only an issue, it's also probably, dangerous to your health. And especially medicine, right? I mean, you can buy so much medicine anywhere, but like you don't actually know if there's the right thing in the medicine as it shows on the package. So that's where blockchain comes into play and is able to change farmer and consumer goods over the next years by implementing blockchain tracking solutions. Alibaba, a big company here, which we sometimes use in examples, they filed over 2,500 blockchain patents in 2021 alone. They used credit scoring based on blockchain and many other things. Pet ownership, we talked about quickly. I don't need to go into too much detail here. There's it's a very overlooked market in Web3. COVID-19 obviously accelerated pet ownership. After COVID, we had a lot more people having pets because they all got bored and wanted to have a cat and a dog to entertain them. It's going to be a $1.3 trillion industry by 2030. And already, it's not as strong yet, but very soon, 1 out of 3 people globally will own a pet on average, right? So that's a market you can no longer overlook. That's where we invested in Petastic, the ID company, and we invested in Dogami, which is more like a metaverse for pets, where you can play around and have your own games with it. Remittance, a bit more of a technical topic, but basically the idea is, how can you send money from A to B cross-border, and you don't have to pay so much, and you don't have to use like certain banks. You can use that with Ripple, Stellar, Arf, many companies in the space. Ripple probably the most predominant ones because they were able to have a lot of lawsuits in the US. But here you can basically send your money from A to B. It's almost real time. Right now, if I want to send money from Singapore to Germany, I probably have to wait 3-4 days, and this is already fast. It's quite expensive to do so. So, if you can use certain payment providers, that makes a whole difference, especially the worker industry in Singapore, Dubai, where a lot of foreign workers are working. They all want to send money home to their parents. That is what can help them a lot, because now you don't have to pay so much fees anymore, and it's secure, it's instant, and it just creates a way better economy cross-border. You can see here some of the stats. It's going to be 16% of the global blockchain market is going to be cross-border payments. This is already growing. And by 2024, we expect to have all business-to-business transactions. 11% will be via blockchain. Education, here we use INSEAD as an example, which is a business school in Singapore and France. They are able to have their degree on a blockchain. So you can go to the website and you can click and download the blockchain report, and you know exactly if this person has ever studied at the university because it comes directly from the university record. It's accessible for any employer, for any reference check if you want to do for a future business partner, for a future startup you might be investing in, or a co-founder you might be starting a business with. Now, even like big politicians, businessmen have fake degrees. That was in the news many, many times over the last years. Of course, not every school is doing so yet, and it will take some time to transition. But there's a lot of companies we see which are able to provide services for the students to do it, where it also makes it easy to share and just prevents a lot of fraud and challenges. It really helps with transparent collaboration. You can storage files, increase academic career development, and MIT, INSEAD, NUS, many others are already part of this journey. Charity social impact, one of the last topics I want to talk about, but that's really, a big piece. And you can see here a statement from, the chief strategy officer of Circle. That's the one company which released USDC, the stable coin in crypto. You might be heard about it. Where it also helps to support Ukraine and other areas where it's challenging, and they are able to drive community and eventually donations to support any humanitarian relief efforts. Philanthropy is another thing where a lot more people looking into of how to give back effectively and how to support certain things. At the end of the day, it's also a big challenge of tax fraud and tax evasion. And by doing that more transparent and traceable, there's a lot of, first of all, tax you can save as a government, but more importantly, also you can track where the capital is going to and how it's been deployed. And it cannot be used for any, I would say, negative purposes. And it's interesting that 78% of US charities are accepting crypto in 2023. And the average crypto donation has been grown by about 30x%, compared to the online charitable gift area. So it is reaching even some of the remote areas where we didn't really anticipate it being so fast. But for them, it's it's really a game changer. So yeah, that's kind of gives you a bit of an idea of how we think about things and where we do think blockchain technology has evolved. If we have a bit more, do we have a couple more minutes?
Sure, sir. Your call. No problem. No
Okay,
problem.
awesome.
Yeah.
Because I recently talked about another topic which I think could be quite interesting for you to see. I actually spoke about this about half a year ago, because we do feel there is a lot of need to show that, because I want everybody to encourage to at least once a year, once in their lifetime, start your own company, right? Big or small, great idea or not. It's just the biggest learning experience you can have, right? Because you have to do everything from scratch. How do I get a website? How do I open a bank account? How do I incorporate a company? How do I hire someone? How do I raise funds? How do I write my own pitch deck? It's literally like a business school combined, right? If you do it right. And I think especially at your university, you have a lot of resources on hand. Pretty sure your professor is going to be very helpful. If you have any idea, now is the time to put it in practice, right? Because you don't have to potentially support a big family, or like you don't have your own family yet, you don't have a job where you have to work 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and you're in a good ecosystem where you have a lot of like-minded people around you, your classmates from other sectors, and it's a great opportunity to now to try out something, right? Even small, maybe it might fail, but it's still going to be an extreme learning perspective. But what do we need to do in order to do so, right? So we surveyed all our portfolio companies. And there's a big sample size now. Small, big, failed, not failed. And what we found is that the only thing that matters is grit, right? And grit is three things for us. It's a growth mindset, meaning that you have to think big and you have to not be afraid of thinking big. And you have to embrace your failures and not regret them. The only thing is you have to realize them, you have to learn from them. But failure is a great thing. But I would say you learn a lot more from your failures than you do from your success. And you have to build a strong network. And that is a really big piece I want to quickly touch on, right? Because, I mean, yes, you've probably heard in many motivational speeches and videos, you have a growth mindset, think big, embrace your fears. Fair enough, right? Everybody kind of knows that. Not everybody's doing it, but everybody knows it. But everybody's underestimating network. And I hear this from so many people where they say, oh, in my industry, it's not that important, or like, I'm just a college student. How can I build a network? How is anybody talk to me? Like all these different things, right? And I think that's completely wrong. I think every industry out there is a people business at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if you're in sales, if you're in tech, you're always working with people. You're always going to work with people. You're always going to have people as clients. You're always going to hire people to support you. You're always going to rely on maybe outside funding. So the stronger your personal brand, the stronger your personal network is, the better your success will be. And a very interesting example, right? If I would ask you now, you probably know Mercedes-Benz, right? You probably know like Ferrari, like all these car companies, but you probably cannot tell me who the CEO of the business is. But if I ask you who is the CEO of Tesla, you probably know, right? And it's a very simple question here. Like Tesla has never spent any dollar on marketing because Elon Musk is their marketing. I'm not saying that's good because obviously like you are prone to error. If something happens to the CEO of Tesla, then it has a bigger impact than if something would happen to the CEO of Mercedes-Benz. But nevertheless, it is a way of fast tracking anything you're trying to do. Is it a business? Is it an academic career? Is it working in a corporate? If you know the right people, it's always going to be beneficial. But I think the way people think about networking is very wrong, right? It's always, first of all, it's always a doubt that like I cannot provide anything to the other person. And second, it's always the expectation of the other person. And both is a challenge. I see networking as creating friends, right? If you are meeting your first classmate, you're not thinking, oh, what can this guy provide to me, right? You're just like, oh, wow, he's a nice guy and like we would love to hang out and spend some time. And once you have that mindset, if you go to any meetup, if you have companies visiting your school, just try to chat with them, right? Like don't jump in immediately and be like, hey, here's my CV. I want to start working with you. Like that's not going to work. You're not going to build a relationship. You're not going to build a network that works. And for example, what I did is I started creating, I hosted meetups, right? What that means is I understood, okay, venture capital is a people business and I need to know other funds so I know what deals they're doing. I need to know founders so I know what they're building. And I need to know investors because I need to raise money for investing in these companies. So I started hosting meetups, which that means is like I started very small. I opened some Telegram groups. I called them Web3 with Toby in Singapore, right? And I put my face in that group and I added people to it. I had 5 people, 10 people. And then I invited them to my place or to a coffee shop. First, I let them pay their own drinks, right? I just be like, hey, just hang out, like bring 10 cool people together. We have a good time. And now, like a year later, I have over 1,000 people in these groups, and the meetups are massive, right? Like we're gonna host one in Denver in the US now. It's gonna be roughly about 400 people. So it grows, right? And like eventually everything funnels back to the personal brand, the fund, but also to me. And now like, people are happy to join because there's a lot of new people they meet and, we sponsor the drinks now obviously reach a different level. But I'm just saying that's how you build a strong network and personal brand. It's just one example how I did it. There's many other ways to do it. But when I first create these groups, I didn't ask for anything. I said, hey, I just want to meet people. I just want to share with them, a cool location. I might give you a coffee. I pay for 10 coffees or whatever, 10 teas. And then we just chat. So people joined. They had nothing to lose, right? They just dedicated their time to it, and that's it. And that's why also, like, when you are trying to look for a job or trying to, start your own company, and you reach out to people on LinkedIn or any other platform, don't have any expectations, right? And like you will message 100 people and 80 of them will say no. Doesn't matter. The 20 will say yes, and you go from there, right? And that's the growth mindset you need to have, of just like dare and take risk, right? Take as much calculated risk as possible in your age, at your stage. Connect with people, use your professors, your community as a hub. And especially in Web3, it's completely community driven, right? It's always community. New layer ones, exchanges, all these things are building on community of people coming into. So if this is an industry you're interested in, I highly encourage you to really understand networking and community building, because that's what you're going to do for a long time. So I'm going to pause here. Maybe we can open up some Q&A where I can go a bit more in detail if that's also interested, but just also trying to want to get your feedback and thoughts and ideas of what are you guys most interested in.
So, Tobias, I think you can also take up the rest of the points because Q&A is the last stage. So I'll open up the mic for them after that.
Okay, awesome. I think, sorry. Oh, I thought that
No, I
was a
said
question.
the Q&A is the last stage. I mean, the question answer with the student, interaction with the student is the last one stage. So I will open the mic for them after that.
I think one last thing I want to quickly just share with you guys, because I think it's quite interesting, is when you invest in this industry, the way something like this, it looks like this, right? So that's what people are going to share with you, right? And when you create memos or briefs or you work with a venture capital fund, that's something you would have to do, right? So you have your companies, you have to classify them in certain industries. You probably also have to specialize in a certain industry. For example, you would say, oh, I really love gaming, or I really love analysis. And then you would sort of do a lot of research in that space to be on top of trends, to know exactly which companies are doing stuff, to know which investors are there, which companies are you excited about, and also to really have domain expertise, right? Because think about it, you're going to be sitting on, I probably have 10 to 15 calls per day alone with just founders, right? They're pitching their idea to us and they want our funding. And I don't understand almost, I know sometimes I don't understand what they're saying, right? Because if they're doing something new and crazy and innovative, and they've been, obviously doing this for the last 2 years, 1 year, and spend 10, 20 hours a day doing this, I'm by any means no expert, but I have to be an expert as soon as they pitch me. So like the whole idea venture capital is about is not being an expert in industries. It's being able to understand a trend or an industry very quickly, right? And that's why it helps to look at so many different companies and also work with these businesses, because at the end of the day, there's always a cost and a revenue. I need to build a product that is interesting enough for customers to spend money on having that, because it solves a problem either for a business or for a person. And once you've achieved that, they will be able to pay for it. So your business makes money. And if you're able to cut down the cost or keep the cost under control, then you eventually reach profitability. And that's what the business is about. And if you fundamentally break it down, every time you hear something, someone talking about something, use your mind or even walk around, right? Go to your latest mall and break down the businesses into what it's all about. If you go to McDonald's, or if you go to, I don't know, any other place, IKEA, whatever, like understand how does that business function? How does it work? And if you do that on a consistent basis and you can break it down immediately, you're going to be very great in venture capital, because all these businesses need your help. They need to have someone who abstracts away all the complexity, brings the business to what it is. And honestly, it doesn't really matter if it's Web3 or not. The only thing that sometimes changes if you have a token investment, which means like you don't invest in the equity of the company, invest in the token of the business, then you might have slight changes because there's an economy built around it. But eventually that economy will still need to drive revenue growth and growth of the company. And if that token doesn't do that, it is just going to be a challenge. But here you can see this is what we call a fact sheet. You have some of the companies, they'll know, okay, what area they're in. You will see what the valuation is. So how much is that business worth at the moment? Or when you entered that business, you can see, okay, what are your co-investors on these deals, or which other companies also invested in these companies? And now you can see where's the valuation today. That ideally should be higher than when you entered. Otherwise, it was a bad investment. And then you can also see some of the performance triggers they had, right? So you can understand what did the company actually do. And once you are, let's say, okay, yes, I'm excited into this company, and you start writing up investment memo or investment brief or like some sort of, longer document about what the company actually does, then that's how you go about it. You provide a short overview. You understand what the entry valuation is, the terms of the previous rounds, how much money the company has. You understand what's the co-investor base. You understand where they are today. And then you understand from this to this, did we think their progress is justified? Is it fast enough? How did the competitors evolve? Is it justified that the competitors are further ahead or not? And then, of course, you understand what's the performance moving forward. What are their goals? What are they going to do? How are they going to use the money they give them? And the last thing is you want to assess is the team, right? Especially in early stage investment, what we are doing, a big piece is around the team. So when I invest in a company you guys are building, my first question would be, give me a background of yourself, right? And I don't expect the background to be, oh, I went to this school and worked for Goldman Sachs and whatever. It doesn't actually matter. What matters more for me is like, if you're building, let's say, a company in payment, like what's your domain expertise in payment, right? If you've been to Harvard, to Goldman, to JP Morgan, but you've never worked in payment, your background is not very relevant to me because it doesn't tell me they know any payment players, how the business works. Unless your co-founder is like a payment OG, as we say, then it's going to be a difficult sell, right? So don't always think too high. You don't need to have an exit to start a company. You don't need to work for big brands to start a company. You just really have to be passionate what you're doing and start networking in that industry and tell them, either by posting on socials, by releasing blog articles, show them your domain expertise in that field. And I'm pretty sure you'll be able to attract either some interesting clients, customers, and so on and so forth. So yeah, summarizing what I said is like, blockchain is a very diverse industry. We went to the first presentation, we saw a lot of different areas where blockchain plays. We all know that, gaming, DeFi, and certain things are very interesting right now. Even Bitcoin related projects is a new narrative that is coming up. We understand that networking and community building is extremely important in Web3, not only for your own personal brand, but also for the founders you invest in. It's important that they have visibility, that they are out there in their circles, not in a trashy way. I'm not talking about influencers, like who shill coins and all these things, but like, if they're like really building a complex product, you want them to be publishing in certain newspapers, articles, journals, right? You want them to have an audience of where their product is eventually selling to. And we understand that you have to build fact sheets, you have to, analyze the company's performance over time. You have to understand that, backers and valuations are important for venture capital. And I think the last point is that, at the end of the day, it's always the team that drives the success of the business. Because you can have the best idea, it's always the execution, and the execution is driven by the team. So don't be too excited about an idea. This idea has been around for a long time, probably already, just no one had the right skill set to execute it yet. So hopefully you guys can be some of the next founders or venture capital investors. And I'm opening up for questions now. Thank you guys for listening. Really appreciated it. And I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say.
Thank you so much, Tobias. First of all, I should really say that you have really bifurcated the whole 1 hour into three chapters, which is more into Web3 investments and the career they should have. And I really appreciate that, Rohit. Jigyasu and Nandini, if any question, anybody, any questions students have, they can write in the chat. I mean, you can represent and write in the chat. So I have certain questions from the students on my notes. So over to you, Tobias. I'll start my first question. Okay, so in your slide, you have given on the market for no code development, no code software. So how the question is from the engineering side that how it is going to impact the developer market, which is the current developer market.
That's a good question. I think there's two sides to it, right? Number one, in order to create the no-code platform, you still need developers, right? And that's typically a very complicated process because you need to make the development almost seamless, right? And of course, as the company grows, for example, they need to hire more developers. They need to build out different patterns, different blocks where people can easily use it. So I don't think it's going to threaten the developers in itself. I do think that certain AI tools and even ChatGPT already makes it difficult for very mainstream developers to see a long-term career, but they can easily pivot. And I also believe that we're not at a stage yet where no code can be replaced by code, right? I mean, we see already all the no code stuff for websites or for games. It's still very simple, right? It's like your casual, hyper casual fragment at the website. It's very simple. If you want to have good quality, right now you still need to have proper coding developers on the team, hire a team or like hire someone who can do it or learn it by yourself. But I think the no code gives you a good, I would say, entrance point in just cutting costs for basic things and also just provide a better and seamless experience for people to be involved in the process. Because it's kind of cool if you can build your own game. It might not be the most pretty game in the world, but you have done it. It's your own game. Your friends will play it because you have done it. So it creates a very different market than traditional games or traditional websites, because it's kind of like you've been involved in the process. And that's what we see already happening quite a lot, is that the person which has always been the silent user is now being part of the product, right? They're part of developing it, they're part of using it, they're part of further developing it. And I think that's what's going to make a big change in this whole creator economy as well, right? Because now we can monetize your own games technically. Fortnite Creative, if you're familiar with it, they launched a program where you can build your own worlds and monetize of it, which I think is fantastic, right? So I know a story of a guy. He was doing very difficult work, didn't make any money, and now he makes over $1 million a year creating games in Fortnite, right? And no one ever knew this would be a career. So like there's a lot of different ways of generating income, but also generating value to people.
Good point. My next question is slightly, from coming from your slide for the students, they are not clear, or they want more explanation on what is pet market doing with Web3. That investment which slide you show where pet market is growing, how that they are actually connected to Web3 market.
No, the pet market, you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so like the pet market, what they basically do, there's a couple of different areas, right? So number one is what we invested in Petastic. Like, think about a digital ID, right? For example, in Singapore, we have SingPass. All my stuff is on a blockchain on SingPass, and it is set in stone, basically, right? If I go anywhere, I can show this in Singapore, and everybody will know exactly what it is. The same thing is happening in a pet. But the fact you not just put it on a blockchain because then it's just encrypted, right? Then you would just have your dog name, your dog race, your dog age, your dog vaccine on a blockchain. That's not really helpful. So when you move it into an NFT and it becomes effectively digital identity, you can send from A to B, you can use, you can maybe even sell, right? If you sell a dog, you can sell it to the owner. Then like you have literally a digital passport towards the dog. The only thing what you have to do is like you have to get the people on board. You have to get the groomers, the doctors, they all have to basically then provide that information, which is then going to be updated in that NFT. And more importantly, what is a lot of stuff also happening in the pet industry is within entertainment, right? A lot of people, if you played like Nintendogs and Tamagotchi and all these different things, right, which have been quite popular. There's a lot of other stuff also in crypto in a similar industries called Dogami and many others, which in gaming for pets. But at the end of the day, what people are trying to do here is people trying to consolidate the pet industry to have all the pets in one place, because obviously the pet in itself is not going to make a purchase, right? The dog is not going to be there, oh, let me buy this dog food. It's never going to happen. But the owners will, right? And like owners are sometimes obsessed with their pets because they see them as almost like a family member, right? They part of the family, almost a child sometimes in a sense. And that's why like this is so powerful because it's an emotional game. As soon as you play with emotions, like stuff for your kids, stuff for your pets, stuff for your car, that's what people are typically spending a lot of money on, and that's what also happening in the pet industry. And the blockchain or the NFT side on things, Web3 side of things, creates an economy around it, right? So people can get rewarded if they train their dog. They can get rewarded if they bring their dog to get vaccine, which is going to help because otherwise, if I get bitten by a dog and the dog is not vaccinated, I have an issue, right? So there's beneficial, like it's more like of like economy creation. It's more like of a tracking capability rather than like the pets in itself are not doing anything on a blockchain, right? But like it's from a tracking perspective and basically providing value for the community of dog and non-dog owners or any pet and pet non-owners.
Good points. I'll take two more points from students because time is running up. Uh, okay, so the one question is how technology continues to evolve at a rapid pace. How do you balance the need for innovation by ensuring security and privacy of users?
So
Because
can
that
you
is
repeat that?
also coming up in. So what technically what the question is, as the technology is rapidly progressing, how to ensure the security and privacy of users with it? I mean, that's the question for with the emerging technology, how we are making sure that the security and privacy of users also is a concern which are taken care of.
Yeah. Oh, great question, right? And I think a lot of people always ask me on panels and keynotes and stuff, they say, shouldn't we ban crypto? It's used for illegal activities, right? And that kind of goes in a very similar direction, right? Because at the end of the day, when you have a new technology, when it's coming up, it's typically never regulated because the government is always reactive. It's never proactive, right? Like there's something's building up, it reaches a size, then something bad happens, and the government says, okay, now can I let this happen? We need to make a regulation out of it. For the most part, there's some governments around the world that are more proactive and that work with certain industry players and stuff like this to ensure. But at the end of the day, it's mostly reactive. So what that means is if we now say we cannot allow new technologies because it's more risky or it might be used for illegal activities, first of all, it'll be very harmful for any part of innovation. But more importantly, if you think about the traditional banking system, how many fines are banks paying for illegal activities? So like the illegal activity is anyway going to be there, right? Regardless if you're regulated or not. We can obviously like trim it down and make it more accessible. But in terms of innovation and technology, I think the only way to change that is that the consumers get more sensitive, right? What's happening in Europe, for example, where a lot of companies have to not comply with certain regulations because it needs to be driven by the consumer first, in my opinion, any sort of change. The company is not going to change because they're making money off your data. So why would they now say, oh, we shouldn't do that because it's unethical? And the government's not going to do anything because they're either too slow or they're more reactive. But if the people are getting more confident and also sensitive about certain things, and if investors like myself only fund projects that are actually good and do the proper due diligence on them, then we will eventually reach a stage where I think we can have a more meaningful conversation around this, and that we won't also have as many negative players, who are sort of making use of that yet uncontrolledness of the technology or the industry they're playing in. So yeah, I think it's a big education piece. That's why universities are fantastic, right? They can tell you to be sensitive. They can tell you what is happening, how to approach these things. But then also obviously always do your own due diligence and take calculated risk in these things. Everything with new technology is risky, not only because they're bad actors, but also just because it's still not yet proven, it's not audited, and many other things. So always be a little bit mindful. And only touch it with as much effort or capital as you are willing to lose.
So, Tobias, with this, I'll ask the last question. That is, I mean, that's the
Sure.
concluding question. That what last words you want to say to students? I mean, who want to start their corporate journey?
So you cut out for a second.
So what students are saying is, okay, what is the advice you have for the students who are starting just now starting their corporate journey?
On
I mean,
corporate
they're
journey.
just graduating now.
Yeah. I think there's kind of three things I want to say. Number one is take risk, right? Like, I mean, get out of your comfort zone is more important, I think. I mean, like it's very easy if you go in a corporate job that you kind of do exactly as you're told and you're not taking any sort of risk. You just follow the corporate ladder. But I think even in corporate, right? That if you do a bit more effort than anyone else, if you take a bit more risk, if you propose a little more risky ideas, you can make already a very, very big difference. You can stand out from the crowd. And I think that's something I've always done. Like I've always literally been the guy who's like, this is horrible, like this process doesn't work. Why is everything so slow? We should automate this and all these different things because I was like, I cannot work with some efficiency like this. And you might edge on with a couple of people that might not be super happy, but the predominant people, and that's like, and if a corporation doesn't value this, right? If a corporation says like, no, you should be sitting there and do exactly as I tell you, that's already challenging to work there, right? Because nothing's going to change. It's going to be slow and you're not going to be innovative. You cannot do anything. You cannot bring your own ideas in. And in my opinion, every organization, the best idea should win. It doesn't matter if the partner says it, the CEO says it, or the intern says it. If you have a better idea than me, wow, you're awesome. Like that's great, right? Like it should not be the opposite way just because I've been there longer or I've earned more money or like I'm a partner or whatever. It's completely irrelevant, right? The smartest idea wins. And I think look for a company who has such values. Don't always go for brand value, to be honest. Sometimes because if you join Google or if you join any other massive organization, yes, you can have a great maybe opportunity and you have a good brand in your CV. But the problem is you're just one of many, right? If you join a startup early, if you join a small organization, and then you can have a lot more opportunities. Even like staying with a good friend here in Bangkok right now, and he um used to work with a German big company, and they asked him if he wants to go to Thailand, and he took that risk. And after 2 years, he's managing Thailand. This would never have happened in Germany. He would never manage Germany, right? Because it's just too big of an organization. So like sometimes it's nice to take that risk. Look for a company you're like-minded. So my first point. My second point is sometimes it's good to look for a small organization first because you're getting a lot more experience in a shorter time, a lot more responsibility. And I think the last thing is have fun doing it, right? And like that's I think the most important thing. It's like find a job you actually like, not just because the brand is good or someone else is telling you have to go there. Trust me, it can be a very long 8-hour day if you hate your job. Um, it's not fun. And it's also not going to help you long term. So, try different things, do some internships. I did a lot of unpaid internships at first. It's just, I think a struggle everybody has to go through at some point in time. And, sort of hustle your way up and just always have fun doing it. Change if you don't have fun doing it and try to, always open your mouth and say something and just take risks.
So with this, I think I can conclude the session, Tobias. First of all, great thank you for the patience and the support you have given to us. And secondly, I would really say to students that you should take the lessons for what he has said. First of all, he has said about the industry so well, about the Web3 and the emerging market. So first thing is that it's a big bet. It's going to happen. I mean, the way he has presented it very well. One thing is further, there's a positive market going to happen for Web3, especially for India. Now, coming to the point, he has also emphasized the fact that you should be taking more risk. And this is the age to take more risk. Don't look at too much into the branding, but you should look at more learning and take more ownership and take more risk in terms of the jobs that you will start. With this, I think, Tobias, I think I should conclude this first session of the inaugural session of the Tech Summit. Thank you so much for coming.
My
Tobias, and
pleasure.
I know you're extremely, extremely busy, and
Okay.
extremely sorry if I disturb you some way or the other,
No, no,
because
not
I
at
know
all.
that you're always in assignments, and I'm in between. So sorry, and if it has bothered you anyway, but thanks for
Absolutely
coming
not.
as a guest. Thank you so much
Anytime
for
again. Anytime again. Thank you so much for having me. Really,
thank you,
anytime again.
thank
And
you.
if some of the students want to reach out, please share my socials with them, or like
Yeah, I'll just share
I'm
the
happy
link
to.
profile of yours. Sure.